Good morning. It's great to see folks. Good to have you here. We are so excited to welcome back Ashley White, who's been a longtime 9:30 caller in different roles. And so very fitting this week. And just want to appreciate everybody that came to the call yesterday. We will be sending out a message today on our blog, just kind of about the 9:30 call pause that we had yesterday, about how important this community is, and recommitting on our why we do this work, and why we show up for young children and families every day. So I just want to thank everybody yesterday for joining us, and then today to have Ashley. And so Ashley, as you know, our question on the 9:30 call is for you to tell us a little bit about you, how you came to be in your current role, and then we are so excited to hear about the research agenda at the Department of Early Education and Care.
Thanks, Amy. Good morning, everyone. So happy to be back here. It's been a while, so good to see all of you. I'm Ashley White. I'm the research director at EEC. Been at the agency for about a year now. Have been in early education policy for about 4 or 5 years now. Previous to working at the agency, I did early education research at Mass Taxpayers Foundation in Boston. So again, happy to be here today and to talk to you a little about the research agenda, which is a really big accomplishment for the agency and for my colleagues. So I will attempt to share my screen the proper way.
Always the hardest part. And I think actually one thing that I learned by listening and the board meeting is that this is the first ever research agenda. And I think that's so exciting to think about a state department. I see former Commissioner Tom Weber. No, no blame to you, but just I think it's also indicative of where we are. And the commissioners talked about data dashboards. We know that people are really thinking about kind of like how do we know that what we're doing is supporting children and families? How can we get better at it? And we expect that this is going to help us do that.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. Absolutely. This has been quite a bit in the making, and I am not obviously the only person who contributed to this great body of work. So I guess to start, I would just like to one, just thank I think the commissioner for her leadership and really I think promoting and wanting to make sort of data and research informed decision making, as well as Amy Checkaway, who has spearheaded this work internally as well. In addition to, the research and data analytics team and all the program teams internally who helped inform this research agenda. So in terms of the goals here, I think overarching, we really want to be intentional about our research partnerships and the research that's going on in the field. And we really want to put out there in the world kind of what our priorities are and what our interests are in the hopes that that sort of aligns researchers and gets folks behind, some of the most challenging and pressing efforts kind of happening in the field. We have been, for more than a year, I think, building research capacity at the agency. I have a research analyst who I'll mention later on the call who's joined my team. Adrian Murphy's team in data analytics has grown quite a bit. And so this research agenda is just part of a larger effort to really build on our research and data capacity and kind of promote continuous learning inside the agency. These questions were developed based on a lot of conversations with, internal staff and also some external stakeholders to really understand what their priorities were, where sort of gaps in knowledge were, and what some interesting ongoing work was needed. They're also meant to complement the KPIs. So if folks tuned into the board meeting in October, Adrian Murphy presented on our sort of key performance indicators, which are really these dashboards meant to share and be transparent about what is the data telling us right now. And the research agenda is meant to sort of complement this and be a little bit more forward thinking, right? And asking sort of the why behind what we're seeing in the data. And so this sort of the questions are meant to sort of represent those things. We are engaged in quite a handful of research partnerships as it stands, and there are questions on the research agenda that represent those research partnerships. But there are also plenty of questions yet to be answered, and for which we don't have partnerships for. And so, again, really looking to be intentional and to set out our priorities for the future. Um, the document is meant to be sort of a living document, so it is posted on our website, which is awesome. But it is not meant to be, oops, sorry, not meant to be something that is static and doesn't change. We want this to be responsive to the agency's priorities, but also responsive to what's happening in the field and what folks are saying, folks are feeling. And so we welcome kind of continuous feedback and thoughts on this. It is not meant to be final, sort of by any means. I'll go quickly through this because I think mentioned this, but this was quite a few months of work of continuously engaging sort of internal staff and external stakeholders. Met with them quite a few times over the past few months. We also shared sort of drafts of the agenda, kind of internal to executive team meeting teams and EEC's advisory council a few months ago over the summer. We also shared it with the Education to Career Research and Data Hubs Research Advisory Council because we want to sort of have all the education agencies have a research agenda and have some questions that are aligned across those. And then we, as I mentioned, published this in October, so it is on our website for all of you to access. And moving forward, this is really about, developing partnerships to help address some of these key questions and continuing to refine the agenda as the policy context evolves. So next, I'm just going to go through the sort of some key questions on the research agenda. It is organized by our strategic priorities. So starting off with family access, just wanted to kind of give folks, a taste of some of the questions on here. This is not exhaustive by any means. There are a whole other host of questions, but perhaps ones that are notable at this juncture. And so the asterisk, just to note that these are questions that we have at least one existing partnership focused on, but that doesn't mean that additional inquiry wouldn't be helpful or that they're answering, every single piece of that question. And so if folks are curious about certain questions that even have asterisks on it, we would still be welcome kind of conversation around that. So we have some questions here around, like I said, family access and about reforming the CCFA system. I think as folks know and hopefully have experienced, EEC has done a ton of work, particularly Tyrese Nicholas and the family access team to reform the CCFA system to make that easier for families. And we kind of want to understand a little bit deeper about how those improvements have altered or hopefully improved the family experience with the system. We've also done quite a bit of work to, thanks to investments from the governor and the legislature, increase reimbursement rates. And so there's a question about kind of the impact those have had on family access as well. And then the last is sort of about understanding supply and demand over time. We actually have, I wouldn't necessarily call it a research partnership, but we partner with an organization who helps us basically gather all of our data and use it in a model to understand supply and demand. And so that's what the sort of asterisk indicates here. And that is third sector intelligence, or 3SI, as we call them, which some folks may be familiar with. For program stability, that's sort of the next priority area here. You'll see some questions, a question about sort of operational funding. That's obviously, directed at C3 and the extent to which that is having an impact. We also have a question here around the cost of operating an early education and care program. And as folks know, perhaps know, we're working with an external research partner, AIR, to update our cost models to inform, our CCFA rates, but also, other finance mechanisms at the agency. And then we also recognize that sort of operational funding and sort of the cost of care work is definitely one piece of program stability, but that there are also potentially other promising strategies out there. And so just wanted to acknowledge that that's a key question on the research agenda as well. And then workforce support's obviously a really, really important part of the field, and certainly one that's much talked about and good focus on. And so we've got quite a few questions on the research agenda regarding the workforce. We, as folks know, had this early education and care staff pilot, right, that gave priority access to early educators to CCFA. And so we've been working with an external a researcher to understand kind of educators' experiences with that program. And that's really exciting. And we're starting to get some of the findings from that. And then we want to really better understand the characteristics and experiences of the early educator workforce. And so we also have a research partnership with BU, which I'll mention at the end, to better understand that landscape and take a look at some of our workforce data and understand sort of gaps in our data and where we need to make some improvements there. And then, of course, the last question about sort of additional strategies that we can implement to further support recruitment and retention and career progression. Program quality is sort of the last one, last strategic priority here. We've got some questions here around kind of quality supports leading to changes in program quality and leader and educator skill development. That is a nod to a research partnership that we have with Apt Associates that's funded, partially at least funded by New Profit, to sort of look at early childhood support organizations and the ability for those to improve quality. And then mental health is obviously a really, really important focus, particularly, during and coming out of the pandemic. And so wanted to have a question on here about the extent to which, our existing supports are supporting the emotional development and behavioral health of children. And then the last one here is about elementary school outcomes for children who receive childcare financial assistance. And this is a question, there's a couple of these on the research agenda. It's really about us trying to partner more closely with our colleagues and friends at DESE to look at data, over time. And so we've got some resources dedicated to partnering with them and trying to understand school outcomes for children who, in this instance, participate in CCFA, but also looking at children who were at a CPPI program and now might be in elementary school. So as I mentioned at the top, we've really been trying to build research capacity and data capacity within the agency. And so I think one way that we do that is by these external partnerships that I've sort of highlighted, but we also want to build sort of our internal staff and team. And so we've made some wonderful strides in doing that in terms of me being hired as the first research director at EEC, having our first research analyst in Caroline Connolly. And then thanks to the great work of Adrian Murphy, I'm getting some additional resources in Virginia Spinks and Caitlin Dermody, who are going to be focused on those sort of questions that we're partnering with sort of DESE on, like looking at data over time to understand child outcomes.
Ashley, just want to really thank you for that slide because I think sometimes it can be hard to find or understand the people who are
Sure.
doing this work. So really appreciate names and faces. So thank you.
Yeah, yeah. And I think a part of a big part of the research agenda and being here this morning is wanting to be more transparent about, what's happening at the agency and what's going on and what we're learning in the hopes that we all can kind of learn together. So just last few slides here, just wanted to highlight, I think, some of the existing research partnerships, which I touched upon, just to give folks a sense of sort of the depth and breadth of research that's happening at the agency and how much we really do prioritize making data and research informed decisions. And so I don't want to go through all of these, but I think folks can see we've got quite a bit going on internally. And I think there's going to be more opportunity for us to share out more about this work and what we're learning again, so that we can all kind of learn together. So be on the lookout for board meetings and resources publicly as well. Next steps, I think, I've mentioned this already, we've shared the research agenda publicly. We really want to, inspire engagement from researchers and funders and other stakeholders. And we really want to build intentional and meaningful partnerships with research organizations to help answer specific questions on the agenda. I do want to also be clear, though, I think I've mentioned a lot of partnerships that we have with large sort of academic institutions or large sort of research consulting firms. And that is just, I think, one piece of the pie here. And I did want to just make sure to highlight that there are a lot of talented researchers in Massachusetts who maybe aren't at an academic institution, aren't at one of those big sort of global or national research firms, but are at a local nonprofit in Boston or in Massachusetts. And we'd love to hear from you all as well and engage on areas of the research agenda that you all might want to tackle or that you're interested in answering. So just want to make sure that there's certainly diversity in terms of the types of research partnerships that we're looking for to help us support answer some of these questions. And then, as I mentioned at the top as well, this is not a static document. We really want to make sure that we are representing what's happening in the field and what people feel like are gaps in knowledge and where there are challenges and things that need to be addressed. And so I just really encourage folks on this call and to share with your colleagues that if you have thoughts or feedback or adjustments, or if you feel like we're missing things, or as the policy context evolves, want to make sure we're focusing on certain things, please don't hesitate to reach out. And there's my contact information at the bottom of this slide. So I will end there and hopefully do this successfully. So
And while you're doing that, actually, I think that a lot of appreciation in the chat. There's some questions. I'm actually going to turn it over to Marissa to run the Q&A, but I have to jump. But before I go, can you talk a little bit about how you will continue to update folks, kind of as the work? We so appreciate you coming here. Could you come to, we have the commissioner come monthly,
yeah,
and also to think about like where are the opportunities for people to weigh in,
yeah.
as you think about that.
That's a really great question, Amy. Thanks so much for asking that. I think I think we're sort of working through kind of the details. I think it is our goal that we would update this. Maybe it's not sort of like a huge exhaustive update, but that we are looking at it and refining it at least annually. And then, maybe some bigger adjustments every, 2 years, that kind of thing. But we definitely want to look at this at least annually. I think, as I mentioned, we really want to make strides to make the research that's going on at the agency more apparent to sort of the folks outside of the agency. And so we're hoping to kind of continue to build out the research and data webpage of our website. We also are going to be sharing a lot of findings and research in board meetings upcoming. And so folks should stay tuned there. And then, Amy, I am so more than happy to come to this call on a regular basis and connect with folks and share out kind of where appropriate what's going on and the progress that we're making and hear from folks about areas that they may feel like are not represented or should be represented. But if folks also have feedback in terms of other avenues that I can come to and share, I'd love to hear them and love to potentially engage.
Great, thanks. All right, I'll turn things over to Marissa.
Thanks, Amy. And thanks, Ashley. This was a great presentation. And I think a lot of the conversations that we've had on the 9:30 call has been focused on sort of the data collection piece of this and what all of this information feels like for providers. And I just really want to thank you for making the connection to, what's the information that we're all getting out of this? Why is it important for us to collect data in EEC and how that sort of in turn helps us to better understand what's working and what's not working within the system. So wanted to thank you for that too. So there's a lot of appreciation in the chat. I think our first question is from Joanne, who's wondering about what tools are you or will you be using to measure program quality?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think that there is some uh, I think we're hoping folks can kind of help answer. There's some questions about kind of program quality on the research agenda, and I think we're hoping folks can help us there. I do know that there's a lot of work happening in the agency in terms of salary scales and credentialing and that sort of thing. And there's a few questions on the research agenda in that direction to better understand sort of the connection there, because I think quality is about the workforce, right? And so we really want to understand more about the workforce and support the workforce. And so that's a big piece. I also know that there's this is sort of not my wheelhouse at all, but Jennifer Crandall at the agency is really partnering with folks at DESE around sort of the literacy launch and sort of measuring, child outcomes and things like that at programs. And so I think there's certainly a connection there. But I'm not sort of the expert to speak on that. But that's a really good question. And I think, like I said, the workforce is a huge part of quality, and so that's what we're really focused on at the agency. And we've got some research questions really dedicated to understanding the field and figuring out how we can support them and what those tools are in supporting them.
And then there's a couple questions in here about sort of reporting requirements. So in addition to this research agenda, Eugenia put in the chat, there's other reports and research that EEC has done in the past or that is part of sort of like the annual reporting requirements of the agency. So you can find those in the link, but can you just say a little bit about how this research agenda relates to, those annual reporting requirements? And then we know that there was also some additional reporting requirements that were included in the state budget in FY25. So is it sort of in line with some of those pieces or is it
Yeah.
separate? How are you all thinking about that distinction?
Yeah, I think they are separate, although they may live sort of in similar places on the website. But they are sort of distinct in our minds. Though I think what's interesting is that, as we start to dig deeper into those legislative reports, I think that there are some really good questions on there that will help us, think about our work and inform our work. But there wasn't sort of at the time of creating this agenda, there wasn't sort of a lot of knowledge about those reports or what was going to happen with the budget. But I think that they are a useful tool in us digging deeper and understanding our programs and using that to kind of inform our work.
And then there's a couple questions about studying the recruitment of the early childhood workforce and sort of bouncing off of that, the data collection around program leadership. So thinking about
Hmm.
directors and family child care owners,
Hmm.
current incoming plans for outgoing. So just wondering if that was sort of built into any of the current research plans that are going on.
Yeah, sorry, say a little bit more about,
So I
was it the ECSO sort of reference?
No, it was the well, it could be actually. That's an interesting like program quality connection
Mhm.
to it. I think the original question was talking about sort of the recruitment and retention of the early childhood
Uh-huh.
workforce. One of
Uh-huh.
the research projects was focusing on that.
Yeah,
And
sure.
then specifically for directors, I think was the second piece of that.
Okay. On the recruitment and retention piece, there's some work going on with apprenticeships or upcoming work going on with apprenticeships. So there's some research questions around the extent to which those can support recruitment and retention and professionalization and kind of career growth within the field and understanding, what the impact of those are. And then I think at the director level, if I'm understanding correctly, the early childhood support organizations are really about sort of trying to form leaders within programs in the hopes with the goal of that, impacting program quality and relationships between educators and children. And so I think that question really kind of focuses at that level. And if Sarah Volkanant has been a huge, huge piece of that work at EEC and is really leading the charge there and working with APT closely on that.
Awesome. And then Tom, thank you for saving me the reading of the chat. Do you want to ask your question live for us all?
Yeah, it's first of all, good morning, Ashley, and the many colleagues that you have here. This is spectacular. Um, I know it was set up front, but this is historic not only for the department, but honestly, it's incredibly rare within the public sector to do anything like this. And I think it's totally bold and it's going to be catalytic for a lot of really important activity. So my question thought is a corollary to something that I think Amy sort of teed up, which is sort of what's coming next. And I think what I was going to um, propose or suggest, because I know the department is always looking for more meetings and more working groups, but setting up a formal structure for engaging stakeholders in this, I think would be invaluable. I don't know if it's quarterly meetings based on the priorities, but I could even envision as you think about trying to engage partners, doing a session that kind of outlines how your partnerships currently work so that people can really understand what that looks and feels like and maybe see themselves in that space. and then having, focused conversations on each of the priority areas and the questions that are sort of most prime
Mhm.
and important, to then engage those same people in thinking about how they might be able to partner with the department. I think, you know, relying on the board meetings or periodic updates alone maybe wouldn't be as beneficial as a formal structure like that. And I know it's more work, but I also think you could find partners externally who'd be willing to help support that kind of activity, which is another opportunity for partnership. So, yeah, I just burned out the clock here with my question.
No, no worries. I think we hope that this sort of agenda has the power to align folks, as I sort of said, but I think you make a fair point that um, a document can only go so far, and convening folks and aligning folks may also be a useful way to um, align this work and make sure that the most pressing priorities are the ones that folks are supporting us in answering and that kind of thing.
Awesome. All right, it is 10:01. Before we wrap up, just thank you so much, Ashley, for this presentation today and for all the work that you're doing at EEC around research and data collection. It's very important. But in line with our conversation today, I'm actually going to turn it over really quickly to Eliza from the Center of the Study of Child of Social, oh my gosh, Center for the Study
Policy.
of Social Policy. Thank you. Who's going to share a quick update on a research project that they have focused on family childcare. And so, Edna, I saw your question at the bottom too around family childcare specifically. So make sure you hear this part at the very end before jumping off. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Marissa. Hi, everyone. My name is Elisa Minoff. I'm based in Washington, D.C. at the Center for the Study of Social Policy. We're doing a research project to better understand the childcare arrangements, really the full spectrum of childcare arrangements that families use, and to think through how policy can better support them. I've talked to a number of you as we are kind of designing our research project. We're doing this research in Massachusetts, New Mexico, and North Carolina, so 3 states. And we've done a lot of interviews already in Massachusetts, talking to parents, talking to other family caregivers, grandparents, and others who do significant care, and talking to and actually touring some childcare centers in Boston that serve immigrant families, and I've learned a ton. We're kind of wrapping up our research, and we're really wanting to speak to a few more family childcare providers, as well as 1 or 2 more informal caregivers, whether it's a grandparent or someone else who kind of provides care more informally to children. And would love your help if you have connections to family childcare programs who you think are providing really, really great care, especially to immigrant families or families of color. We'd love to interview them. The interviews last about an hour and a half, and they're compensated with a $100 gift card. I'm going to drop in the chat a link to the form where people can just sign up to participate in the interview. But if you kind of have any questions, you can also just email me directly, and I can answer them. We could set up a time to chat. At this point, we really only need to talk to sort of 3 or 4 more folks, but really want to make sure we get that family childcare perspective here in this project. So thank you for any support you can provide, and thanks to those of you who we've already chatted with as part of this project. Thanks, Marissa.
Melissa. Awesome. Okay, so thank you all for being here. We will be back next week on Tuesday. We're going to be off on Monday for Veterans Day. So we'll see everyone on Tuesday. Thanks.